Hey guys, so before we get to installing all these amazing parts, I thought it'd be best to catch you up on what I've done to the car outside of crash repairs, things I needed for the roadworthy, and just things that I really wanted to do to make this car a good base to start off with. So firstly is the alloy radiator from Fenix, and this wasn't from the accident, but unfortunately my stupid mistake. When I was removing the top radiator hose, I was maybe a bit rough and the top plastic neck broke off. The plan was always to replace the radiator with an alloy one. I just wasn't planning on doing it just yet. I really like the Fenix radiator. The fitment is amazing, and even when drifting, the temp never changes. Next was the throttle body mod. Yep, because this is a manual, it makes it much easier, but essentially what this does is it allows the throttle pedal to control the full range of motion. If you're not familiar with these cars, they use an early fly-by-wire type setup, but I guess Toyota didn't trust they could do it properly, so they built in a mechanical override. That mechanical override allows you to use half the sweep of the throttle plate, giving you half throttle, even if the servo motor fails. The downside of this is the computer is in charge with exactly how much throttle you get. So it gives you a really spongy sort of throttle pedal, and on a motor like the 3SG beams, it's really lacking. You really want to be able to downshift and rev match and things like that, and it makes that a lot harder. So there is quite a few videos on how to actually do this mod on the internet already. So I'll give you the quick rundown. Essentially, you remove a gear on the servo motor, you unplug two plugs, and you either weld on a little tab onto the throttle plate, or you buy an adapter from Excessive. I'll throw the link in the description below. So what this mod actually does is it overrides the servo motor and gives you the full range of throttle when you request it, not when the computer decides to give it to you. So there's a couple of downsides you need to be aware of if you're planning on doing this mod. Firstly, it doesn't really work on autos that well. The main one for me, you don't have cold start, meaning that if you start your car while it's cold, it will not idle. So you have to actually use the throttle pedal to keep it idling. Once it's warm, you can actually adjust it so you have perfect idle with the idle screw, but unfortunately cold start won't work. The next downside is your traction control won't work. It'll be flashing the traction control light at you constantly, telling you that it's not working, and it will also throw in engine code. Last downside, which is if you lug the engine, it will die. The car doesn't really know how to react to that because they would usually use the servo motor to correct it. So really low RPMs, lots of throttle. I've only ever done it in first and second gear, where I've thought about going back to first, but I'm still in second at the traffic lights, and I've put my foot down, it'll die. Generally, I've learned to drive now where I don't do it ever. Next is the HKS cold air intake. Now, the airbox was damaged in the accident. Going to replace it, but the cost of getting an airbox in Australia was actually quite a large amount, so I opted for this HKS cold air intake. It actually sounds amazing. I'm super pleased with it. The fitment is amazing. The quality of it is really amazing. So we'll see how it holds up over time, but I'm really loving this cold air intake. Next up, I converted this to an electric power steering system. I did this because I love limiter, and to be honest, the factory power steering pumps aren't the best. I used the AH Astro electric pump, and I bolted to the chassis rail down here. And then I got a LS electric power steering hose kit off eBay and ran that to the rack from the pump. I just used the factory return lines. I then wired the main cables to the battery and the ignition wires to this fuse box. I currently have both wires going to the same ignition source, which makes the pump take about 30 seconds to wind up. You can provide power to one of the wires a couple of seconds later, and it will make the pump wind up a lot quicker, because I have found it to be a little bit annoying. I know people are going to be interested in this, so I think I will do a separate video, take the whole system apart, and show you how I did it in more detail. That will be in a future video. Okay, let's get this thing up on the hoist and I'll show you the last mod. Lastly is the caster arms. In the previous video, I did say that the driver's side caster bar was bent, and instead of replacing it with the fractional unit, I was going to upgrade them with adjustables anyway, so it was a perfect opportunity to throw on some adjustable caster arms. I do like to drift, so a lot of positive caster is very beneficial. Generally, I put in as much caster as I can get equally, meaning that I adjust them both to the max amount of caster, and then I back off usually one to make them 100% equal. And that's everything, guys. You are all caught up with this car, and you know what that means. In the next video, we're going to get our butt in gear and install these parts. Like and subscribe so you don't miss a thing.